All right, I already filmed this whole video, which took about 10 minutes, and then I realized my microphone wasn't on, so here we are again. What is going on, guys? It is Dylan the Machete here, and Francis Ngannou just absolutely embarrassed the sport of boxing, embarrassed Tyson Fury, embarrassed what boxing has become, the way boxing is going. It's going downhill. MMA and Muay Thai, they're going uphill, and yeah, that shouldn't have happened. You know, someone with 0 professional boxing fights going in there, fighting one of the best heavyweight boxers of all time in Tyson Fury, going out there, arguably winning a lot of the rounds, knocking him down, making it look like Fury didn't look like himself. But that's not because of Fury. That's because of Francis Ngannou's presence in there. Francis Ngannou made Tyson Fury look like just a less version of himself. And you can say that, you know, oh, he didn't take this fight seriously. You know, Francis Ngannou, he is not a professional boxer, therefore Tyson Fury didn't take it seriously. He may not be a professional boxer, but he was the UFC World Heavyweight Champion, and he's got the power of a madman. You know, if you're not training for that fight, you're asking to get knocked out, and obviously he didn't get knocked out, but he got knocked down. He took probably some of the hardest shots he's taken. Obviously, that Deontay Wilder, some of those shots are a lot crazier, but you got someone as big as Francis, as like, if you just look at Francis Ngannou and then you look at Tyson Fury, who looks more like a specimen? Francis Ngannou. Obviously looks on everything, but if you got that man standing in front of you, why are you not training for that fight? You know? So people, you can't use that excuse. You can't just say like, oh, Fury was just not training for this fight, because if you got that man standing in front of you, you're training for that fight. So, yeah, and the head of the WBC, which is the World Boxing Council, they have said that Francis Ngannou is now ranked in the top 10 of the world for WBC boxing. Now, that's pretty crazy considering that he lost the fight and it was by 1 point. You know, he lost the fight by 1 point, and arguably he won the fight. In my books, after watching the fight, I thought he won the fight, but boxing is not going to let him get that win, especially when Tyson Fury has his fight with Alexander Usyk. Say this fight's not for the title, they go in there, they fight for the title against Usyk, Fury wins. Okay, well, he's not the real heavyweight champion because he got beat by Francis Ngannou. I think that's going to be happening anyway, just considering how good Francis did, because this is not a loss for Francis. You know, goes in there, has his Rocky story. You know, that is literally the plot of the first Rocky movie. You know, someone that has absolutely no chance going in there, arguably winning a close decision. That's what this fight was. And I think they're going to do a rematch. You know, they've generated so much money from this, so much interest. And Francis Ngannou, man, he's marketable. The way he speaks, you know, he speaks like he's Nigerian, so English probably isn't his first language, but he speaks clearly. He presents himself well. He's very marketable just by the way he looks. He's like a Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was in his corner. You know, Mike Tyson coached him for this fight. Mike Tyson, you know, obviously sees a lot of potential in Francis Ngannou as a boxer. And, you know, now Francis has got the choice whether he wants to go back to MMA in the PFL or he can continue boxing. But what I think is going to be a great idea is the PFL should start promoting boxing, because they've got arguably the biggest star in combat sports now. After doing what he did to Tyson Fury, they've got this man, you know. Obviously, he's going to be fighting a little bit at MMA, but why doesn't the PFL start up their own boxing organization and bring people like Tyson Fury, bring people like Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, you know, all these high-level dudes, bring them over to PFL and start doing boxing fights there with Francis? That is, obviously, it is going to be a little bit hard considering they've got certain contracts. Some people are locked into this organization, that organization, and all that. But if PFL did that, it'd be massive for their brand. It would grow the brand. It would make people tune into PFL MMA, especially if Francis has a boxing fight, then a MMA fight, then a boxing fight, and an MMA fight. Francis did it, man. Francis proved a lot of people wrong. And especially, no one really gave him these chances, you know. People like the MMA Guru, they were making videos saying that, oh, you know, Francis has fumbled the bag not signing with the UFC. You know, he's going to get signed by somewhere else, but he's not going to have the legacy because he's not with the UFC. And then he signs with PFL and he gets all this money. Okay, yeah, you see, he's signed with the, like, all this. And then, okay, now the boxing fight is, you know, now the boxing fight with Tyson Fury is locked in, but he's going to get knocked out in 3 rounds and he's going to make it look like a dickhead. And then after that, he goes out there, uglily beats him. Man, I saw MMA Guru did a video saying that he was wrong, and good on him for going out there and doing that. But that just shows like how many people were doubting Francis. Sorry, how many people were doubting Francis, not thinking he's going to be able to do it, but he goes out there and does it. And yeah, but here's the thing with boxing. Boxing is a dying sport. And you can tell by the way they promoted this fight. You know, I didn't even know that the fight was happening until 2 days before. I knew the fight was happening at the end of October, but then on the Thursday I was like, oh shit, the fight's happening. What? Like, there's no promotion. Boxing does a terrible job at promoting. They'll only promote these two guys at the top. These two guys at the top will be making so much money. The co-main event will be making a lot less money, and then everyone underneath there is going to be making zero money. I bet you not one person out there can tell me who was the co-main event for this fight. Who was the fight before that? And who was the fight? Like, you cannot name me any of these people who fought before Francis and Tyson. And that's because boxing puts all their eggs in these one baskets when it comes to the top two main event. That's what the UFC does very well. The UFC promotes everyone, gives you a platform. Whereas boxing, they got these two names. And that's another reason that boxing is a dying breed, because no one tunes in for those couple of fights. You know, at least in a UFC fight or a UFC event, let's just take the last UFC event, for example. You've got that with one eye, I forgot his name, the Russian guy. He's fighting. They promote him very well. You got Saeed Nurmagomedov. He comes in. He's promoted very well. Then you have Khamzat versus Usman. That's promoted very well, even though it was 10 days notice. And then you got Volkanovski versus Islam on 11 days notice. So all of those fights, that happened a week or two ago, and I've already just named you all those fights that happened. I couldn't name you one other than Francis versus Fury. And on top of that, they drag these events out way too long, man. They have a concert going on. They got all these rappers and all of these musicians. Like, no one cares. We just want to watch fights. And between the co-main and the main event, it was over an hour sitting there and waiting for the main event to happen. You know, I'm just sitting there on my stream just watching, like, why are they taking so long to do this? Like, we're here. We want to watch this. And they literally had a 50-minute timer saying this fight's going to happen in 50 minutes. And then 30 minutes later, the time is still at 50 minutes. It's like, fuck me, bro. Like, we're here to watch a fight. And then they keep playing these fight previews. You know, they play 10 or 11 of the fight previews that we've already seen. We're already here to watch the fights. We don't want to sit down and watch all of these previews now. We're here. Like, you don't have to sell us anymore. We want to watch this fight. And that's what we're here to do. But you keep showing us these previews and all this bullshit that we don't care about, you know? And then the walkouts, man. The walkouts took like 10 minutes each. All right, I just had another audio fuck up halfway through that rant. But we're back. We're here. And let me continue my rant. So after you've gone through all those, you go through all of those walkouts and you go through all those previews and all that stuff, the stuff that we're already here to watch, then you got Michael Buffer standing in the middle of the ring going like, alrighty guys, for the moment you've all been waiting for. And it's just this long drawn out thing, like, we don't care. Like, mic's on, good. Like, we don't care. We're here to watch a fight. We're not here to watch all these previews. We're not here to watch all this bullshit. And that's the thing with boxing, is they do a really good job at promoting the top two people up here, but they do a terrible job at promoting the people on the bottom. Whereas in boxing, they just promote the top two. And that's part of the reason why boxing is a dying sport. That's part of the reason why MMA and Muay Thai is going to be taking over. You know, boxing, it's a very old sport. And that's why boxing pays so much more, because there is so much more money behind it. You know, all these old heads that have all this money, they're pumping all this money into boxing, but they're not seeing the future. Boxing is not the future. Muay Thai is the future. MMA is the future. In probably the next 20 years, Muay Thai is actually going to start paying some real good money. It already is starting to pay some good money with one championship. And at the end of the day, boxing is just boring compared to Muay Thai. And it's just boring compared to MMA and kickboxing, K1. All of these other combat sports are so much more entertaining. And most of the time when you're watching a boxing fight, you're just sitting there and you're just watching jab, jab, cross, feel out, slip, slip, jab. Like, it's so boring to watch. And yes, you do have your crazy fights. Like, there's one fight on the top of my head. I'm going to chuck the name here because I can't remember it off the top of my head. But there are crazy boxing fights like that you can watch. But Man, you go to a one championship event at Lumpini Stadium and you will see the most insane fights of your life. If you just go to a Lumpini Stadium fight in general, you're going to be seeing some of the most insane fights of your life. Even if you don't know who these Thai guys are, you're seeing crazy fights. Thais that have trained themselves since they're 6 years old to become these absolute beasts fighting at 18, 20, 22 years old. It's a young man's sport. You go to an MMA event, you get some boring stuff when it comes to the ground where you've got some people that are just laying and praying. But if you don't want to watch wrestling and grappling, go watch one championship. Go watch fucking kickboxing. There's a market for that if you don't like the wrestling. So, yeah. But if you go to a one championship event, it is crazy. You got so much more excitement from the starting bell to the end of the bell. And, yeah, I just think boxing is a dying sport. In the next few years, it's going to be going down because you just had someone with no experience come in there and beat arguably one of the best. So anyway, I don't know what's gotten cut out and what hasn't gotten cut out because of this microphone. I really need to get this shit sorted. Yeah, I did not expect that video to turn into me ranting about Muay Thai and MMA, but here we are. Those are just my honest thoughts. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video, mate. What do you think Francis is going to do next? Is Francis going to be fighting in the PFL MMA? Is he going to be fighting boxing? What's Francis going to do? If you have an opinion, let me know down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video, mate.